T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Welcome to All Monitor Talk. I'm your host, Kat, and with me is Mike Stefani. Please do me a favor and drop a like and subscribe if you are enjoying this podcast. Welcome, guys. Mike, take it away.
Okay, so as always, anybody who keeps these animals, please join US ARC at any tier level. Like and subscribe to the page. Give, donate, volunteer your time at any of the shows. We all need your help to fight these stupid reptile laws that are coming at us in the middle of the night. And Vanessa, Jeremy, and of course Phil Goss, they work so hard to fight for our rights to keep these animals. So join US ARC today. Also, Reptile Talks is May, I believe it's 16, 17, 18 in Anaheim, California. Go get your tickets. Come out and see. Uncle Mike's going to be giving a talk. A lot of great speakers, big names in the hobby. So go join and come out to California and see everybody. One more thing before we bring on our guest. Hey, there he is, CJ. So I just want to get this out of the way. May 24th, Minooka, Illinois, at Brian Waterloo's house is Monitor Fest 2025. It's going to be a great time. This is the 4th year. So, it's growing and doing real good. So come on out and talk monitors. It's a great day. So we have with us CJ Gentle or Gentile? How do you say it?
Gentle. Yep.
Gentle. Okay. Well, I got friends over here that are the Gentiles, and they spell it the same way. So I wasn't sure. So hi, CJ. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are y'all today?
Good, good. I'm glad to have you on. I don't mean to swing in front of you here, Kat, but so tell us what you got going on. I know you just put up a new reptile building, all state of the art, really nice stuff. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing over there.
So we're just focused on breeding Asian water monitors right now. We just finished this building. I think it was in October. We kind of just streamlined everything, like all the things that was hard about keeping Asian water monitors, like water changes, things like that. Mostly just the water, really, as you know. People don't like doing the water changes. So we pretty much just streamlined everything. Every tub, every, water feature has its own water hose, has its own drain right beside it inside the building, so that you can do water changes all inside the enclosures without having to go outside or, pull a water hose to it or anything like that.
That's awesome.
And when you're working when you're working with Asian water monitors, most water monitors are big time water poopers. So the less sloshing and carrying of big nasty water tubs, the better it is, because there's a few reasons for that. So when you make it so automated and easy, you don't, sometimes you might say, I had a bad day. I'm not going to carry that thing today. I'll do it tomorrow. So with the automatic drains and the fillers, it makes your work, like you said, streamlined, and just, there's really no excuse not to do it daily, if need be.
Yeah.
And automation is really good when you're dealing with these water shitters.
Yeah, that's for sure, because water's heavy. I know. I see some people toad out.
And when it's got a bunch of monitor poop in it, it can be dangerous too when it hits you in the eyes and in your mouth. It's not a good thing.
That's the worst. Yeah, I don't have to deal with that anymore, except for like the babies. I still tote water, but it ain't big tubs of water.
Right.
So, but yeah, But yeah, we just streamlined all the water. We have a propane tankless water heater on this building. So like when the groundwater is really cold in the wintertime, in Alabama, it don't get as cold as like where you live, Mike, but it gets in the 50s. And if you fill a tub up with water in the 50s and that lizard goes and stays in it at night, it'll kill your lizard.
Absolutely.
Like it can kill your lizard. So I have some lizards that are really smart and they won't stay in the water if it's cold. Like I know I can fill it up and the ambient temps will bring it up to, temperature within a couple of hours.
Right.
If they go in it, they'll come out. But I have some that'll go in it and they'll just stay in it. So those specifically.
It's the same with like when you have an animal. I'm in Wisconsin here. It gets, even in the summertime, my basement is pretty cool. However, the monitor rooms are all heated, but the worry, just like with the cold water, always is, once they get too cold, their muscles don't cooperate, and they may not have the strength or the muscle capacity to get up out of that water. So, like when they escape down here, not often, but if they get into the cold side of the basement, I always worry, because if they find a real nice little bivouac and, it's 65 degrees out there, they get cold and then they don't even realize it, but it's so cold, their muscles aren't working proper. And generally then you find them dead, like you said.
Yeah. So I just, in my old building, it was not great. In the wintertime, I'd fill up 5-gallon buckets of water the day before. Like every day I'd be filling up like 10 or 25-gallon buckets of water and just let it sit overnight while the ambient temps heated it, because I didn't have hot water on that building. And if I hooked a hot water hose to the house, we don't have a tankless unit on our house. It's just like, your standard hot water heater, like a 50-gallon or something,
right,
or a 100-gallon hot water heater for showers, So heck, it wouldn't even fill up one big tub, it wasn't even worth it. So I was having to use buckets, and change waters that way. So when I did this, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that ever again.
Right.
So I ran that hot water heater and it's awesome.
Let me ask you something. So how many monitors do you have at the moment? Like how many monitors in cages? I mean, a lot, right?
I have 13 right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I have 9, or I have 8 adults, 2 sub-adults, and then 4 babies, I believe. So I think that's 13. So, but yep, that's what I'm working with right now. So I just got a pair of T-negative albinos from Jerry Wolf at Wolf's World. So I just got a pair. He brought those here Wednesday. So
are they little still, babies?
No, they're a proven pair. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I seen you post those, and I seen you post the new guru. I don't know if they're new to you, the gurus.
Yeah. I just produced some guru head albino. So we have some of those and some normal head albinos too. The pairing was a guru to a coral. So I was trying to prove out my guru, see if he was het, because there was like a 50% chance he was het T negative. And he didn't produce any. There was no visuals from this clutch, so chances are he's probably not a het T negative. Unless I just got like extremely unlucky.
It's funny.
I got one more clutch.
When I was working with snakes, I'm not a genetic guy. I don't care for morphs. I mean, I don't. You know what I'm saying? That's just not what I like or whatever. But that whole, I go back so far back, that whole het thing, when that het thing came out, it's like, people were charging more for the hets. And then they always put that 66% possible. It's like, wait a minute, man, you're paying extra money. You got to wait 3 or 4 years till you can breed them. Then you got to raise those up to try to prove it out. I was never, that het thing was always scary to me.
Yeah. You
I got this good.
You know what I'm talking about? The Punnett squares, from biology.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where you put the genes, the genetics together, and then you can figure out, okay, well, this is how many babies I'm going to get like this. This is how many babies I'm going to get like this.
What I always wondered about that is, so if you got, the percentages, and again, I'm not a genetic guy, so don't hold me to what I'm saying.
I'm not either.
So
I don't know a lot about it either. I'm still learning, so I'm not some kind of professional at genetics. That's for sure.
Right. No, but so what I'm saying is, so you get a couple of visuals, a couple of hats, and then you got that 66% possible hat. How the hell do you know, unless it's visual, how do you know which is an actual hat and which one is, the possible hat?
Well, you won't until you breed them.
Yeah.
You won't until you breed.
I get it. So when you're buying a 66% possible hat, I mean, in the world I come from, it's it's a hit or miss, a shot in the dark, or maybe BS. But again, I don't know nothing about genetics, so
that's like these normal head albinos. They are 100% heads because of the pairing. Like they're not, they're definitely heads. But I still price them, the price of a decent, nice quality captive born normal. I didn't really upcharge anything for the head,
Yeah,
I mean,
do
they
that
were
with
for
my
like,
cookies too.
so they were just
I have
500 plus shipping. That's a pretty good price for a good quality captive born baby, that's thriving, healthy, not full of parasites,
right now
socializing well.
Do you notice that, so from that movie, I don't even know how long ago it came out, that movie with Snaggletooth, the black dragon, everybody loved the movie, and I don't know, 90% of the black dragons out there are named Snaggletooth or whatever that one from the movie is called.
Toothless or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So that really, I think that movie alone really drives the sales of black dragons. Everybody wants that Snaggletooth or whatever its name is, and but I notice a lot of people are producing black dragons right now. Is there? Are you feeling any competition like with other breeders like Nick Lillis, and now there's this guy Greg Stevens, who's I think he's on his second clutch now. But are you seeing people lowballing or anything like that? Or I mean, I know I don't know you very well, CJ, but I would hope that you would stick to your guns and your prices and not, I mean, you people should pay what these animals are worth.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do see a lot of people undercutting, trying to move animals, but for me, I started my prices at 2,900. I went to 2,600 after 1 year or so, and then I went to 2,200. I've been at 2,200 for my black dragons for 3 or 4 years, and you got other people out here selling them for 1,200, 1,400, 1,000. But I've not really had that much problem, moving mine at 2,200. So I mean, people can ask what they want for them, I'll give discounts to like vets or first responders, or customers that came and bought from me before. I take care of like my returning customers.
Absolutely.
Responders, vets, things like that, But as far as like my prices, I've not had much trouble moving them at 2,200. But yeah, there's a lot of people producing black dragons right now. I think we're only gonna have one more clutch this year. It's due this month or next, and I don't have any more incubated. So I've kind of backed off a little bit with the black dragons right now, just because of like the amount that's out there.
Yep. Here's something I found, CJ. That's I mean, that's how it is. It's just the nature of nature and the way things go. So I was producing a lot of sulfur water monitors. And these are big animals. They live a long time, and I started to, when I started producing like lots and lots of them, I started, like it's almost like a moral thing. It's like, are these animals all living great lives? Are they? Of course, I don't really lower my prices too much, but are these animals actually being cared for proper? It's a moral dilemma. So what, I had just gotten rid of Kingpin and Bumblebee because I just don't feel, I have one clutch of theirs still cooking, but I just don't feel that, there needs to be more of them. And there's other people breeding them. However, once I sold Kingpin and Bumblebee, and talking to other people, well, no, they got rid of their sulfurs. This guy got rid of his sulfurs. So it's like I would have been back in that same position, but I I'm not going to say jump the gun. I ran my course with them. I work with animals for, so long, and then I just kind of back off of it. And so it sounds like that's where you're at, CJ.
Yeah, for one, my female's not really a huge fan of Chill because he's so big. She's a little intimidated by him, so she's not been a super great breeder to him anyways. And then on top of the fact there's just black dragons out there right now, And yeah, like you said, I worry about all my animals going to great homes. And that's really why I like to produce more of the higher end stuff, because typically if somebody's going to pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $6,000 for something, then they're willing to take care of it and put that much money or more into an enclosure. You know what I mean?
The
if somebody's paying cheap, if they're buying cheap, they're probably,
Well, it's like I always say, if somebody balks at the price of any of my animals, it's like, and I'm not talking about people that I deal with, that are in the reptile, in the monitor world and know all this stuff. But somebody who comes to me and they balk at the price. It's like, bro, have you built your first enclosure yet? Oh yeah, I got it. I'm like, well, by the time this becomes an adult, you're going to have gone through maybe 3 enclosures. So if you're balking at the price of the animal and you haven't even got into the husbandry and cage building end of it, you might want to look at a bearded dragon or a leopard gecko, something like that, because these are long-term commitments.
Yeah, they live a long time. You take care of them properly and don't overfeed them, That's Absolutely. Like I had a guy ask me prices before, and he was asking about one of my guru head albinos. I told him the price. He's like, LOL, I'll just get 2 more at Repticon for that price. Or, and I'm like, okay, I just didn't even respond because I could have just laid it all out there for him. But I was just like, you know what? You go to Repticon and get that parasite infested, wild caught, traumatized animal. And
yeah, well, you wouldn't want him to get your babies anyway,
Yeah.
With an attitude like that, yeah.
Yeah, with people that say stuff like that, I just don't even care to even sell for them. Or if I feel like they can't take care of something, I'm not gonna sell to them,
Right.
But all of her come with a lifetime husbandry support. So if anybody needs anything, I help everyone anyways, not just my customers or friends, anybody that comes to me. I have people that buy from other people that come to me for help. Yeah, sometimes I tell, if I see a post about it, I'm like, you should ask your breeder that you bought this monitor from for this advice, because that's their job to give you advice on how to care for your animal. It's not random people on the internet, because if you're breeding these guys, you should be well versed in how to care for them. You know what I mean? And you should be willing to help your customers with the monitor. If they don't want to eat or something, you should be able to offer some advice.
The way I look at it with my animals, and I'm like you too, man, it pisses me off to no end. However, I'm more interested in helping the animal than the person who kind of not screwed you around, but chose somebody else. But with the price that I sell my animals at, people understand that you got me as a consultant for the life of that animal. You know what I mean? So it is a little higher price, but I answer the phone, I answer emails, I answer fucking texts. You get more than just a lizard.
Me too.
Yeah. It's a full-time job. It's a full-time job answering all hours of the night. Yep. I've had to put my Facebook Messenger on silent because people just blow my phone up all hours of the night. And, I help everyone, like you said, animal first. Even if, I'll be like, you should buy from a breeder next time that's going to be willing to help you with this animal, but here's what you need to know.
Yeah, you're right. You help them, but you always got to step on their balls first, and then you help.
You just got to look. You'll learn something about me. I'm just a straight shooter. I just tell it how it is. I don't care if it hurts people's feelings. I've always been that way, and that's just how I am. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything for nobody. I'll just speak it how I feel it,
Well, I think it's very important when you're working with monitor lizards, I think it's very important not to sugarcoat, because, we've been there and done that. And in advance, the problems not necessarily problems, but issues and concerns that people are going to have and you just got to be prepared for it. And there ain't no way to pussyfoot around it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
So, with your Kat, is there anybody in the live chat saying any questions or anything?
No, just a lot of people agreeing with everything we're saying.
We about ruffle some feathers in this one.
Well, you know what? Here's one thing everybody's got to keep in mind. Like CJ's success, my success, everything that Kat does. There's more than one way to do this. So there's no one special formula. You got to figure out what works for you and your facility in your regional area within the United States or abroad, wherever you're at. Because, people from Texas will ask me, what about your ambient temps and your humidity? And it's like, dude, I can tell you what I do here. However, if you're in Texas, depending if you're in the coast or in the center of the state, you're going to have way different conditions than I have up here in Wisconsin. Yeah. So a lot of stuff people got to figure out on their own. You can only help them so much. Then there becomes, regional weather variations that, we don't control. It's you have to figure that out.
Yeah, when people ask, they'll be like, oh, what wattage heat bulb do you use? And it's like, well,
that's what I was
what I use might not be, what I use might not be what's going to work for you and the type of cage that you have and like where you live and, like how cold it is, the room that the cage is placed in. Like you would have to measure that out yourself, like get a temp gun, right? Yep. And like put in, just get different bulbs, put them in, figure out where your basking area is going to be, keep checking the temps and you know what I mean?
Right. Like this is the question that I love. What kind of heat bulbs do you use? And I tell them what I use. And then a couple hours go by, I get a text back. Well, what about this light bulb? I'm like,
all the time.
I don't know. I never use those. I told you what I use, So people got to think a little bit on their own too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens all the time where people like ask what bulb and then I tell them and then like the next day they come back, well, I bought this one. What do you think about this one? I'm like, well, I don't know. Right. But like what you're saying, Pat, like people ask me all the time what bulbs to use, Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, it really depends on the ambient temperature. Well, what do you use in your building? I'm like, well, my building's temperature controlled. Like this building stays in the 80s all the time. If you're keeping in your house that stays in the 60s and 70s, what I use might not work for what you're going to be using, But I tell everybody, like, a week before you get your monitor, set up your enclosure, buy a few different bulbs, try them out, see what works, and then go from there. That's pretty much what I tell everyone. Don't wait till you get your monitor from the FedEx chip center, come home and then try to set up that enclosure.
It's too late to start figuring out then.
Yeah, and
you need to dial it in ahead of time.
Yeah, and it's the same with the UV lighting. Like people ask me about UV lighting and I'm like, okay, well, depending on what bulb that you use, you're actually going to have to read what they recommend on the box of the bulb, how far away to place that from the basking area and all this stuff, like, I don't know why people they don't want to read. I don't know.
No, people are lazy. People are lazy. They want you to, like give them the information. And then like, if you do that's why I'm very cautious. I like to get to the bottom of an issue before I give advice because, I don't want anyone to come back and say, well, you said this. I'm like, well, yeah, dude, I didn't realize you got 14 feet of snow. I mean, you got to put everything into context. And some people are very lazy. They want some kind of a recipe. And as we all know, with monitor lizards, there's no one recipe. You got to figure what works for your situation.
Yeah. Okay. So I got a question.
Yeah. That's like.
Someone is saying, isn't full spectrum better, or is there not more studies done on that? It is better. There have been lots of studies.
I've never used anything but halogen lights and fluorescent or LED for ambient lighting. But, that's just me. Everybody, like I said, everybody's different. You know, some people swear by UV, and some people see certain things that aren't beneficial with UV. So it all depends.
Well,
yeah, and I think it's species dependent too. You know, species dependent. We're talking about water monitors, but obviously, you know, if you have like a chameleon or something, you know, they definitely need UVB.
Yeah. Well, there's this whole thing that came out.
You know?
Like, you know that reptiles can see more colors than we can, right? So like human beings, they have I think they have like 3 sets of cones in their eyes, but like reptiles have 4, and they actually can't see the full spectrum of, you know, their vision unless they're exposed to like UVA and UVB, because they can actually see that. If you provide them with UV lighting, then they can see the full spectrum of what they would be able to see. And if you don't provide that, then essentially it's like reptiles are colorblind, you know, they can't see everything. So like I always try to use UV in mine. But I also use it anyway, just because like, I feel like, well, you know, I mean, they're exposed to it in nature, and, you know, maybe they like it. Like I've seen with my tree monitors, they will go, the females, when they're gravid, they'll go, you know, under the UV a lot more during that time. And I think it's for like egg production and things like that. But I don't know. It's just something I provide to mine. But everybody, you know, whatever works for you is good, you know, but that's just been my experience.
Well, you know, and here's my beef, and it's not really a beef, but here's my beef with UVA and UVB products is, number one, we all know there's not a man-made anything that's going to compare with what the sun does. So the sun is very what's the word I'm looking for? It's very stable. It's a very stable, whatever is coming out of the sun, UVA, UVB, UVC, it's all very stable. Where when we're talking about man-made lights, like if you go to you know, a Chinese factory on a Monday or a Friday, and you compare, you know, with your little UVB meter, none of those light bulbs, I've never seen any brand or whatever that is like you put 5 light bulbs in a row and they all test exactly the same. So there's so much of that variable there. And then reading from Dr. Francis Baines, you know, there is some detrimental effect with certain man-made UVB and UVA products. So there's a lot, and because I'm so cheap, you know, the UVA and UVB marketing is what kept me away from them since the beginning, because, you know, they would always say like, well, for 6 months, it could be 18 inches away. And then 6 months after that, you got to drop it down to get the same benefit. And I'm like, dude, my lights are pretty stable. They're stationary. So I ain't doing all that. And then, you know,
you just got to replace them. Like, you're supposed to replace UV lights every like 6 to 12 months.
And if they weren't $80, I'd be happy with that.
I know. Well, sometimes, you know what I do is I find the sales, okay? Because I use the Power Suns, which are like their UV and heat combo. So like I'll wait for the sales, and then once I see them, I just buy like a whole bunch so that I have them on hand. And I use those for the monitors, the monkey tail skinks, and the iguanas. That's what I use those ones for, because I mean they are like kind of hot. They're too hot for like my other stuff, like the tokays and stuff, you know.
So CJ, are you a UVA, UVB fan, or what do you know, what's your opinions?
I offer it to the babies usually, but all my adults, none of them have UVB. So, but around here we feed strictly whole prey. Like maybe twice a month, I'll cheat and do like soft-boiled eggs, you know, or something like that. But like I feed them 3 days a week, and at least 2 days of those weeks is like chickens, quail, a rat, or, you know, or things like that. Wednesdays is usually do what?
Do you use supplements like calcium and D3 and vitamins and all that?
No, I don't use supplements for any of my whole prey things I feed my adults, like quail or chickens, because, you know, they get everything they need. You know, I'm not feeding like pieces of chicken from Walmart, you know.
Yeah.
They get all the bones and gut content and everything. Now, my baby's like pinky mice. If I feed like pinky mice to a baby, I might supplement it a little bit because, you know, they don't have as much gut or bone content. So like I'll supplement those like once a week or twice a week. Crickets I'll usually dust, things like that. Going back to what you were saying about the UVB though, like it says on the box the distance for the bulbs and stuff. Well, if you go to Arcadia website, you can type in your species on their website, and then it'll pull up which bulbs you need at what distance and tell you all this information as well. Also, and another thing about those Power Suns, you said you use those, but I like to keep my basking temps around 130 degrees for the monitors at least. 125 to 150, anywhere right in there, but not much lower than that. That's what I find works for me. But with those Power Suns, I noticed they don't really get to 125, 130 for like water monitors without being really close to the basking spot. Even if you put some black under, it's got to be really close. And once you move those Power Suns that close to that basking spot, that UVB level, UVB level is sky high. I've had customers like, my lizards got caught a burn or something and things like this, and it's because they use those Power Sun bulbs. And I tell them to use halogen bulbs. They're getting harder to find, but if you use halogen bulbs, you're going to get the basking temps you need without worrying about over UVB exposure or moving it too close to cause a burn. But those Power Suns, they don't put off enough concentrated heat to reach those high basking temperatures without putting them at a dangerous level that's too close to the monitor. Right. And then you start to see blindness or burns from UVB, like sunburns, just like, so I never recommend the Power Suns for like water monitors. Well, I can only speak on water monitors, but if you have like a bearded dragon, maybe.
Yeah. But, yeah, with mine, I use I have more than one basking area in like my cages and stuff. Yeah. But also my house is very warm. Like the coldest area in my house is 77 degrees. But like down in the reptile room, it's in the 80s. So like for me, I don't have a problem getting the basking temperatures to where I need them to be. But also, like I said, like I use multiple basking. So like I'll have a basking with the Power Sun, and then I'll have another one that has no UV. So they can choose where they want to bask. They want that UV, they can go under there. They don't want it, they can go bask somewhere else. It's all about like giving them choices.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Choices are here.
That's a great idea. If you're Power Suns, I would definitely offer it. Or what you could do is use the Power Sun at a distance that it doesn't get warm enough, and then pair it with the halogen. Absolutely. That way the UVB's at a good distance, and you're still getting the strength and the heat you need for, It's always an ongoing debate about temps and basking temps and what kind of bulbs to use. It's never ending. Like it's ongoing, so
right. I can only it's hard to change something that's been working for so long. So when I was doing research on UVB and vitamin supplements and whatnot, the research, I found that high basking temperatures, along with vitamin supplements with D3, the high basking temperatures convert D3 into usable calcium within the animal's body. And in doing that research, I read on Francis Bain's site that some of the problems with these new UVs that are coming out is like, you have to be careful with your vitamin supplements, because if there's something that has D3 and you're using a true UV light that's offering the UV, the vitamin D3 that's in your supplements will give them hypercalcemia. So it synthesizes calcium at a higher rate within their body. So if you're using UVA and UVB, I would always suggest like a vitamin mineral supplement without D3. However, I just stick with what I know, high heat and D3. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too, Mike. Yep. If you're going to offer UVB, don't offer supplements with D3 in it. And then if you're not going to offer UVB, then the supplements with the D3. That's exactly what I've read and heard. So yeah, I agree with that.
That is true.
So what do you got coming up, CJ? I'm sure you got. I see you got a few new animals. You got a couple of albinos, or you got some gurus. Anything in the incubator?
I got another clutch of gurus and normal head albinos hatching in June, July. And then October, November, I got a coral to a coral pairing. So I'll have, all three variants, T negative, T positive, and corals, October, November. And
Very
that's pretty
good.
much it right now. I mean, I don't have a whole lot. I mean, those are big clutches though. I think the albino clutch was 20 eggs.
Oh, wow.
And then the guru clutch is 16 or 17 eggs. So I mean, it's still a lot of babies.
Right. So me and Nick Lillis, he's like I call him my protege. I don't even know if that's the right word, but we've been friends. We've been friends for a long time, and we talk almost daily. And what I really like about that is, like, I'm an old dog. I'm kind of set in my ways, and to talk with young people and these fresh ideas is really, really nice. But again, I got to be honest. I'm not a morph guy, so I don't pay attention to morphs. I don't study them. I don't even really think about them. Nick, I was having a conversation with him, and there was a point when he was all, he was gung ho on the morphs and stuff, and he started seeing some issues within his collection, and not only albinos, other natural occurring morphs. But he started pointing this out to me, and I'm like, I never really gave it a double look, Nick. And he sent me a picture of, I don't know what it was, an albino. I don't know if it was T positive, T negative, but it was really odd. This animal had really big, giant eyes and a really long snout muzzle, and it was obviously genetically different. There was something morphologically going on with that animal. And he starts pointing this stuff out to me. And now when I look, I'm like, wow, because I never paid attention. But when you look at them now, and you could see the original species before albinism goes in it, and you look at their head structure and maybe the way they move, it's definitely not only genetically changing their color palette, but it in some cases there's a lot going on with skull structure, limb, the limb disbursement. Have you seen any of that with what you have going on there?
I mean, I've noticed different morphs, and monitors in general seem to have different head structures. They're not all going to look exactly the same. Even some of my normals, that I have, their heads look different than, say, like the black dragons. Black dragons is naturally occurring morph. So,
right.
But yeah, the albinos, the T negatives specifically do have vision issues. That's pretty known. Most, just like albino people, most of them can't see very well. Igor, my big male T negative, he can see pretty good, probably about 7-8 feet, but anything beyond that, I don't think he can see like super amazing, which he can see fine inside his enclosure, but if he was out in the wild, he wouldn't be able to see long distances,
Right.
As far as walking and stuff, I've not really noticed much different. Now, when it comes to breeding, the visual T negatives, especially the males, they seem a little bit like not knowing what to do necessarily. Like you put two lizards, like corals are fine, T positives are fine, but and any other like morph I've worked with has been fine. But the T negative male, especially Igor, he just kind of seems unsure about how to position himself, or like, just not really great at breeding. Like you can just tell like his behavior is a little different than like, the other monitors. So, but as far as like something being detrimental besides their vision issues, I don't see their snouts being like, I don't know which one Nick saw or whatever. I kind of think I might have an idea of which one he's talking about.
Well, he's sent me multiple photos of, and particularly the albinism gene. I don't know if it's T positive, negative, or caramel, whatever, but it seems that as time goes on and they're starting to produce more and more of them, you're starting to see these genetic defects becoming more and more prevalent, which I don't know.
Do you think that could be from inbreeding too? Like trying to produce the albinos, you know what I mean?
It could be.
A lot of the corals in the States right now all originated from nerd. And then, you know, we've gotten a lot of T negatives from those corals, a lot of T positives from those corals, and a lot more corals from those corals. So luckily for me, you know, Igor his mom was imported. You know, he's not related to any of Nerd line, and neither are the two I got from Jerry. They're not related to any of the nerd line. Now, my two corals are related to nerds as far as I'm aware. So, but yeah, I think a lot of the albinos in the States, you know, are a lot of inbreeding. You know, told that inbreeding reptiles is not as severe as like inbreeding mammals, you know, but I guess after like a certain amount of generations of inbreeding, you're going to start seeing things, you know, just like with the geckos. I know a lot of geckos are starting to really have problems with, you know, deformities and stuff. Because
with that being, I don't mean to cut you off, CJ, but with that being said, so when you think about natural color and pattern morph animals, sulfurs, you know, the black dragons, you're not seeing these. You're not seeing the color genetics, but you're also not seeing the misshapen heads and, you know, like xanthic, anything that's naturally occurring seems to remain within the, you know, the phenotypical body structure of the original animals. Where when you're getting into more of these color morphs, I'm not saying it's due to the color pattern morph, but if there is a genetic defect or anomaly that's going on there, I mean, common sense will tell you sooner or later it's going to affect other things. Like, for example, there was one animal out there that was born, I believe it was an xanthic, and it was born with this like scissor head and eyeball thing. And
yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, man, I mean,
not to cut you off, but William Powell just sent a super chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That's my buddy from grammar school, man. I've been knowing him a long time. Thanks, Bill.
Well, I think like with that xanthic, I don't necessarily think it's from like being genetically different as far as like morphs go. I think it could also be related to like incubation fluctuation, or the egg maybe getting rolled and stuff, you know, things like that. What you're saying about like the head structures and stuff, I don't notice it with any of my albinos, or really, I mean, I guess Igor's head looks a little bit different, but I don't think it's like, it doesn't seem like a deformity, you know. That's right. Like my normals that are double heads, like their heads look different than like Chill's. If I look at any of these monitors in here, I don't think any of their heads look exactly the same. Right. You know, I don't know which one. I would have to see what Nick was saying as far as like comparing. Oh, man. I would need to see what you were talking about as far as like what you think a normal head looks like versus like, you know, a morph. I would just need to like visually see it.
Like normal head, like for example, my adult male coming eye. You know, adult males have a slight muzzle, but they have a very broad snout, so it's all in proportion. What I'm seeing is, or you know, what we're talking about is a larger, like the back part of the skull is larger, a very narrow snout, and the eyeballs almost set a little higher on the head and protruding a little bit. So I think what I'm trying to say is this. So any natural occurring color morph that actually works in the wild, you're not seeing that stuff with. However, we all know, you know, an albino water monitor in Asia sitting in a tree, that's bird food. You know what I'm saying? So there's a reason that doesn't work in the wild, where melanism and, you know, the whatever sulfur, you know, that pattern and color morph, it works in the wild, and you don't see much genetic bone structure difference.
Yeah. All right. That's something to think about. I mean, yeah, like you said, in the wild, obviously an albino is not going to survive, and if it does, it'd be like an anomaly, you know.
Right.
Sure, you've seen like dolphins or whales occasionally survive to adulthood, but yeah, like lizards and stuff. Obviously that's why we don't see them everywhere. Even with deer, like leucistic deer, you hardly ever see adults. Just because of like they stand out.
Yep, they probably do real well in the winter, and then when the summer comes and there's all green and brown, and they stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, that's definitely something to think about. I mean, I noticed, I know what you're talking about as far as some of them's eyes and stuff sticking out. I've seen some pictures of some, like, the eyes look very strange and weird.
Yeah. It's probably from the inbreeding, That's why the ones out in nature don't look like that. It's probably more from the inbreeding, trying to get more that are that morph. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
I know these
have you ever
two
seen
that I got from Jerry came straight from Indonesia, and they don't seem to like have the bulging eyes or they're really deformed looking heads. They look like normals. They came straight. They were imported. So
if you talk about inbreeding within reptiles, you got to get that gene pool's got to be very, very shallow to start seeing, defects. Because like, if you think about it, any of the Australian stuff that we breed, I mean, it's all due from stuff that was smuggled, in the 50s and 60s and earlier. So they can really go deeply genetic in a shallow gene pool before you start seeing this stuff. I think my theory is, of course, with the genetic anomaly of the melanin of the skin, whether it, albinism, T positive, coral, any of that stuff, in conjunction with a shallow gene pool, you're starting to see these structural differences. And again, it's very early. And I don't mean it's very early in the production of these animals. It's only because that's deep, like you say, we don't know we do, but there's a lot of that going on in the Philippines, in Thailand, overseas. These people have been, mixing and crossing and hybriding these things for many years. And then it's only now in the United States that we're, the albinos and all that stuff is catching on for many years. But, because of that many years with a shallow gene pool that, could it possibly be that, I mean, it's obvious the genetic, whatever's going on genetically with these color morphs, that you cannot just assume, well, it's affecting their melanin production, their skin production. There's other things that are at play in there that, again, like I say, nature picks that shit out and wipes it out. So in captivity, the longer this stuff goes on, we're going to start seeing a little more and more of this weird genetic defect stuff. That's only my point.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think, you can't know like what all genetics are involved with like these morphs. Like you said, it might not just be like the visual appearance of them. It might go deeper than that. And then on top of like the small pool of inbreeding, that as well plays a role. So I think with my 3 being related to anything in the United States, I'll be able to produce for sure. I can produce 2 unrelated pairs of babies. Not one of them can be unrelated from everything in the state except for the first 2 clutches Jerry produced, and the first 2 clutches I produced with Igor. But I could produce 2 that are unrelated to each other here, as pairs.
Well, that's very responsible to do.
Yeah, I know what you're saying though. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Like at some point, you're gonna start seeing deformities and stuff, and maybe different morphs. It happens faster because maybe something's going on with the genetics of that morph being a morph in general. Maybe it's not just a visual morph like you're saying.
Like I say, it's just something to keep in your mind. And I'm not saying you or Kat or me in particular, but anybody who's watching this, if don't be so naive to think that the genetic anomaly of the color and pattern is where it ends, because it when something is not cohesive with nature, there's more going on there than we see, but we like what we see. You know what I'm saying? People like, the bright white, yellow lizard, but again, there's a reason they don't exist in the wild.
Well, kind of to say the opposite point, like gurus are not really a wild morph, and you don't really see any like weird deformities or head shapes or anything from the guru types.
Right. But my point is that animal would live in the wild without any question. That the genetic change in the guru wouldn't affect its life in nature. It might even help it because, it's very cryptic colored. It's brown and yellow and it blends in with nature.
More the pattern. The guru is more like a pattern, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, CJ. Are they because everything I look at is on the computer. They're like a chocolate brown and yellow.
So they're like a black and yellow, and the yellow, unlike normals, like a normal water monitor, the yellow kind of washes away with age, like fades.
Right.
The gurus maintain that yellow all throughout life.
Yeah,
so it's like
beautiful.
It's distinguish between like a yellow and black. It's kind of like if they're clean and fresh shed, the yellow is like a highlighter yellow kind of color.
Right.
You can't really pick it up on camera very well or in videos. You'd have to just see it in person,
Yeah.
Right.
Nick is saying
that's
something.
the difference.
Nick is saying that the original gurus were a natural morph.
That's I believe he's correct in that. I mean, guru goes great back.
From my understanding, there was only ever one female guru found in the wild. I'm pretty sure what Jim told me, and all the other gurus originated from that guru. That's what I could be wrong, but I feel like that's what I remember Jim telling me.
Spots, right? Don't the gurus have like really big spots on them? Yeah,
Yeah,
right. I'm trying to remember because didn't that guy Brad used to breed them? Salswell?
Squeezebell.
Yeah. Didn't he used to breed them? That was a long time ago.
Yeah, so it's been a long time.
I could be wrong, but I feel like Jim Heck is the one who told me that all the gurus originated from one guru female that was ever found in the wild.
Yeah.
If it was a naturally occurring morph, wouldn't there be more than just one female?
Probably in the wild, but maybe only one that was ever imported.
Well, because like black dragons, you could find them in the wild, but you're not going to go out and find like, tons and tons of gurus if it was naturally occurring.
I think, and I could be wrong. Hopefully Nick is listening and he could chime in because I know he's more up on the guru than I am. I mean, that's another thing I never really looked into. But I guess my point is like with the guru, that is something that I believe, I go way back, that it's a natural thing and it would easily survive in the wild. And there's probably, a locale for that animal, the guru. But the problem is when you go back so far, like everything was grouped into Salvatore, and it's only, I'm not saying recent like that, but, animals were discovered in 1816. That's going way back. However, now, like our taxonomical research that Robert Sprackland does and others, really puts more of a perspective on what these animals truly are. And of course, the animals don't give a shit what we call them. They know what they are. But, with the recent study that Robert did on the Togianus, the scale structures, he said that's something that's very, very unique within the varanid world. And he had told me there's no other varanid known that has the scale structure of Varanus togianus. So he's doing some work on that too. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, we look at them and we see things. However, when you get a real guy, like a taxonomy guy who studies scale counts and tongue color and, whatever the case may be, it might be hemipene placement, and it just changes everything. And of course, us as humans, we like to put everything into categories. Like I said before, these animals know what they are. They don't care what we call them. They know what they are. So that's just a stupid Uncle Mikeism there.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some cool lizards. I'm glad you're working with those.
Oh, man, they're so fantastic.
They look awesome, too. I love the way they look.
Yeah. OJ's a handsome animal, man. Fuck. And you know what? I'll tell you, that's one thing about Varanus togianus. Like, all animals have a flight or a fight, and there's degrees of that. Togianus, I haven't hit the point where they flight yet. They're ready to take you out, and there's no backing up in that animal. So they are very, very cool.
They're like the Chihuahuas of the water monitors.
I would say they're more like the Dobermans, because man, they don't mess around. They don't mess around.
Well, you know, they're small, but they hold their own. You know.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
small, they hold their own.
OJ now is getting to be about. He's about 4.5 foot. So he's a big animal, and he's bold. I'm telling you, he ain't afraid of nothing. Yeah. And it's not. I shouldn't say afraid. Like, you know, all my other animals, that's not my goal, is to have these, you know, puppy dogs that I can put on a leash and walk in my backyard. I don't care about that stuff. But I would like to change a light bulb without the threat of being sliced to a ribbon. So, that's what I'm talking about with them. They are very territorial. And when you come into – so I was going to – when I got rid of my sulfurs, I was like, oh, what am I going to do with this big walk-in enclosure, right? So I said to my son, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about putting OJ in the walk-in enclosure. He goes, Dad, it won't be a walk-in enclosure no more. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, are you going to walk in there with him? I'm like, no, man, that's what you're going to do. He goes, nope, keep it where it's at.
I have to get a shield or something to hold in between you.
Yeah,
you change the bulb, you know, like this.
I've actually done that. I've had like a luncheon tray, you know. Like I can't even remember the species, but in the walk-in enclosure, I can't even remember the species, but I did have to use, you know, when I go in there to change light bulbs or whatever I have to do, spot clean. Yeah, I had to use a little shield to deflect them. However, I'm telling you, OJ, the Varanus togianus, he would figure a way. He's like, that shield ain't going to stop me. So it'd have to be a pretty big shield, because, man, they're nuts. Yeah. My captive borns are a lot different. They're not as aggressive. So hopefully I can work that out of them.
About those, I've never really seen I didn't see you post a whole lot about those, which I haven't been on Facebook a lot lately. We've been so busy with projects around here, so I haven't had a chance to like stay on Facebook a bunch. Well, how those babies turn out? How are they doing?
Oh, they're doing fantastic. They're in April. They were. Let's see. In June they'll be 1 year old. And you know, according to some experience I have with other animals that I've had here, I just lost another female. She was probably a year and 2 months old, just older than my captive borns. And I wasn't planning on breeding them, but the male and the female got along so well, I kept them together. And one day I seen them locked up on the shelf. I'm like, wow, that was fast. So she laid 2 eggs, and this is what my talk is on at Reptile Talks. But she laid 2 eggs, and they were huge eggs. They were bigger. They were bigger than my coming eye. They were bigger than anything I breed here. So unfortunately, I lost her, but I learned a valuable lesson with that is I'm not pairing up my captive borns until they're 2 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
I want to make sure that they're good and ready. Their cloacas are all big, and, you know, it was an unfortunate thing, but, you know, this what are you going to do? It is what it is.
Yeah.
Did you get those from Chris?
I got some from Chris. I got some from Steve Sandin, and then that pair that I was just telling you about, I got from Foley.
Oh, okay.
I got a question here. Somebody is asking, Amy, She says, what do you guys think about people that are breeding some of these monitors to be a smaller species than what they naturally are? Have you seen that?
Yes. And that to me, okay, so when you talk like that, hi, Amy. So when you talk like that, and when you're doing genetic stuff to the proper, again, this is my opinion, the proper way to achieve a smaller growing animal would be, this is line breeding. So you would hold back your pure coming eye. You'd hold them back, and then you'd pick out the smallest ones. You'd breed the smallest ones together. Then you'd hold back those, and you're just gradually reducing the size of your pure stock. However, if you're taking a Salvatore, and I hate that word because it's too general, but if you're breeding a Salvatore and then you throw Celabensis into it, or Samara into it, you number one, you're probably going to get a smaller growing animal, but it's not going to be Celabensis. It's not going to be Salvador, whatever. It's going to be its own man-made thing. So
a hybrid.
A hybrid. And it, if you've been around this shit as long as I have, you realize the damage that hybrids do to our animals. And I'm not saying it's like a physical thing, but genetically, when they close down, Australia's always closed down. So with the, back in the 90s, all the three-way Gould-eye complex animals that were crossed, nowadays, when you want to get Varanus flavirufus, which is a great monitor, if it's captive born in the United States, I would bet my left one that it's not pure Varanus flavirufus, because there's just they've been they've been hybridized so much that unless something comes out of Australia, they're not pure flavirufus. And you can see it in the animal too, which is a shame. And I see that happening with coming eye right now. And man, I love my coming eye. I do not want to see that happen with my coming eye. So please, no hybrids, please, guys. No hybrids, please.
I agree with
I
that.
agree. I agree.
All right, well, we're coming at an hour and 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I know we're coming at an hour 2 minutes, and I feel like I kind of stole some time from CJ. So I don't want to do that. I respect you, CJ, and go ahead, man. I'm going to shut up now. Go ahead and tell us what you're working with, what's coming up, anything you want to say. Shoot.
So we're just working with specifically Asian water monitors. We have 3 T negatives. We have 2 corals. We have an Exanthic, 2 black dragons, 4 double het T negative black dragons. I have I have 4 T negatives. I have the whole back Yayo. I'm pretty sure she's a female. Yeah, that's pretty much what we're working with right now. Clutch wise, coming up in June and July, I have some gurus that are het for albino, and half the clutch will be normal het albinos, just like the one that I just produced. And then October, November, I have more albinos from my 2 coral pairings. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got incubating right now. I don't have a lot, building this building and stuff kind of took my attention away from, pairing lizards and stuff. And I've just been so busy with projects around here. Now we're working on redoing the old building. But yeah, I think right now we're pretty out on. So even when that old building gets done, once these ones I'm raising up, these double hets, I don't plan on keeping all 4 of them. I just bought 4 to make sure I end up with a pair. And then eventually I'll, sell 2 of them. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
So I got a question for you on your new building is state of the art. It's beautiful. Great job on that too, by the way. When you're working with some big ass lizards, so when you are revamping your original building, are you going to branch off into smaller species, or is the water monitors the only thing that's sparking your interest these days? Or, do you have future plans for the other building?
Well, right now the plans are just to keep working with the water monitors, just the Asian water monitors. I really like them. They're my favorite to keep. I'd like to keep a croc monitor, and I went back and forth, and not to breed. I don't really have interest in breeding the croc monitors, just because I feel like it'd be hard to find like advanced keepers, which is what they really require.
Right.
You know, I don't want to send somebody a baby croc monitor and they like lose a finger or a hand when they get big.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have a big male just to experience it. I'd want to start with a baby, obviously, but for now, I just don't have the space for it. I could have did it with this. I could have built a big enclosure in here, but it would have took away from all my Asian water monitors. So right now, the main focus is just the Asian water monitors. But yeah, my wife would love to have some tree monitors. We talked about maybe doing tree monitors,
it
and things like that. But for now, like space wise, these water monitors just take up so much space. I just don't have the space to do anything else.
Right.
I don't want to cut corners and keep them in little like locker style enclosures like
I don't
these
blame
people doing. I want to give them like as much space as I possibly can. People always ask me like what size enclosure do I need. I'll tell them a good size, but I always tell everyone, the biggest you can possibly do.
Absolutely.
That's what you should do.
Absolutely.
So,
and the thing with monitor lizards that we all love so much is, keeping these animals that are so intelligent, to keep them in cramped quarters, it's not like, a snake or a low metabolism animal that goes to its secure place and shuts off. These animals don't shut off. They're constantly on the move. They're constantly thinking. They're constantly, I don't know. I kind of liken them to when you throw, a human being into jail or prison. They're in this little cage all day long, and if they start picking a little hole in the wall, in no time, that hole becomes big enough for them to escape from. And I'm not saying that, but the mentality of them is, if you're not properly kept, I want out of here. And that is a bad place for any monitor lizard to be in. He should feel content within his home, and of course, the more you give him, the better off it is. But yeah, I with you. The lowest common denominator enclosures, like the locker styles, and people who use coat racks for their basking platforms. It's like, man, they I get it. They know, like when you have a fake tree or fake plants, they know that's fake. But also, it's a little more familiar with them than, an aluminum coat rack that makes these weird noises when they're climbing on it,
Hold up. Mike, are they people actually using aluminum coat racks?
Man, I got a story for you. I don't mean to interrupt again, but since we're talking about it, I had a friend this was many years ago. A friend had asked me if I had this certain species that he needed for his project. So, and I'm not mentioning any species or names because I don't want no one to put two and two together. I respect this other guy. However, the nerd style keeping, I'm not so good with that. I think they deserve more than 2x4s and coat racks. But so I sold this beautiful animal to this person, and I'm like, hey, when you get it, let me know. Send me a video. I want to make sure everything's good. So he sends me this video, and here's my beautiful animal climbing up the coat rack, and it was just like making these, like when you, I don't know, think if you take like a screwdriver and you tap it on an aluminum rack, it's just clinging and making these weird noises, and it couldn't climb up it because there's no grip. And then finally it got over the top and then bassed out, and one of its legs came between the grid on the luggage rack or coat rack, whatever it was. Dude, if I would have known that, I would never have sold that animal, because that animal went from my naturalistic enclosures to something that is so foreign to these animals, and it's sad.
Yeah, that's like a lot of our enclosures are like half and half. Like I have a lot of naturalistic logs that go up to like a big basking platform. But I know one of my enclosures I just got done redoing with all like driftwood at the top, different levels.
Yeah.
The one down here on the end. And I have a buddy that like sells driftwood. He collects it. He sells it super cheap to me, but eventually I want to go back through and like redo all these enclosures down through here on this side where I can like just have driftwood, on that side. The big males, they're so big, I'll probably leave their big basking platforms up there. But let's see if you can see here. But you can see like they have a lot of like naturalistic like logs and stuff to climb up. See?
Yeah, and then, you know what, CJ, I don't really have a problem if somebody makes like Jerry Wolf stuff when he's got the 2x4s close together, but they're upended. That's wood.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Their nails connect with wood. However, shit like metal, it's so foreign to them.
I know exactly what you're talking about with the little racks. You're talking about like the ones you see people use that are like coated with the white that go in your closet.
Yeah, it's a baker's like, and the actual baker's rack. You know what I'm saying? They're chrome steel with the.
Oh, I haven't seen people use those. That's
so man,
weird. That
is weird. The closet ones.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Why not just go out to the woods somewhere and cut down some nice, Y-shaped branches or something?
Well, because like, here's what I'm thinking. For whatever time you're saving, not going into the woods and getting those branches, you're spending the money on the coat rack. You could go to the woods, same like you can go to Walmart, and then get natural stuff for free. It blows my mind, and a lot of people do that. I'm not saying a lot of people, but the people that do that, it's like, I often question like the motive, why, and if again, I'm trying not to get myself in trouble, which I always do because I got a big mouth.
Me too.
But it is what it is. These animals should not be climbing around on coat racks, baker's rack, whatever you want to call it. Give them a branch. Fuck, it's easy.
If people need to quit worried about baking their branches, or leaves, and all this stuff,
drives me nuts.
They come from the wild, they're fine. Just as long as you get them from somewhere that's pesticide and chemical free,
right?
It's gonna be okay. Like you don't need to heat them up to a certain temperature. I cannot stand these debates online where people are like, "Oh, you need to throw your 8-foot long piece of driftwood in your little stove in your kitchen that it's not going to fit in, or you can't use it." Like, no, it's fine.
Some of the funny suggestions I've actually heard is, well, if it's that big, go to your local pizza store and ask them if you can put it in the pizza oven. I'm like, the pizza guy's not going to want a wood in it. It's so stupid.
That's hilarious. Could you imagine going to Domino's and be like, "Can I put this piece of wood in your pizza oven?" Yeah, okay.
Yeah. If you did that, like, what if there were little bugs inside? They'd be like crawling out, dying. Like,
well, you know what? So I've been saying this for a long ass time. Unless you're from an area that has fire ants, there's nothing in a branch besides maybe a fire ant or a recluse spider or a black widow. But our animals can handle, they can deal with that. And again, all of my enclosures are, I guess I'm too old, man. I'm too old because in my day, if your soil was an ecosystem, that's bioactive. However, nowadays, if you don't have live plants in it, it's not bioactive. I don't get it, but I love having bioactive soil. People ask me, what about your eggs? My eggs aren't in there long enough for, millipedes and centipedes and springtails to get them. But if you're not able to get to your eggs like in a timely fashion, I can imagine they would. They would.
Yeah. I think it's not good to keep things too sterile either. Like, I don't think you should keep things too sterile. Just like for you, like, if you live in a super sterile environment and then you go to Walmart, you're going to get sick. Like, you don't want to keep things. I'm not saying like keep your water dirty. Like, they need clean water. But like, like bacon leaves or pieces of wood or something like that, or the mulch you go get for them, it's insane. Like,
it is.
Wow.
It is. Now, I got to say one thing when we're talking about that, and it's just like the grocery store diet that I preach so heavily against. I hate it. People should stop doing that. Chicken necks, chicken legs, forget all that. Go get you a real chicken, whether it's a chick, the appropriate size. Use real food. So along with that, with things like cypress mulch and things that you could go to Walmart and buy, or the gas station, and you get 14 bags for $9, whatever. You got to understand something, man. These products are designed to put around your flower beds. So while they may say, 100% natural, somewhere along the line, there's some type of pesticide in there to keep you bugs at bay around your house. I mean, you know it, I know it. They may not say it, but it's in there. So that's why I always try to go the natural route. I'm not thinking about what's inside a bag of dirt. You know what I mean? It's too much to think about. So I just go get it from outside.
Yeah, I don't know about the cypress mulch though, because it's a natural pesticide. So I don't know if they would need to add like any other, cypress mulch is a natural pesticide. Like it repels insects.
Well, there you
I don't
go.
know if they would add anything extra to that, but I could see like, any other kind of bark mulch or anything like that, they probably would add something to keep like, bugs out.
Right.
So, but I mean, anything you buy from anywhere, realistically, you don't know what's in it.
Absolutely.
I mean, cypress, I've never had a problem with it, but that doesn't mean like it couldn't happen,
Yeah.
So
I haven't had any issues. I haven't had any issues getting like big bags of dirt from like Lowe's either. The stuff that's like the all natural hardwood mulch stuff, because like where I live, I can't always like dig up dirt. Plus, I'm an old person now. I'm kind of weak. I can't really dig.
Well,
so, like I'll buy stuff. Like I can barely even carry these bags of dirt.
So here's a little tip from Uncle Mike. My magic dirt that I use it's not dirt at all. However, what it is it's hardwood chips. And everybody in the town that my in-laws live for the past 50 years, every year they don't buy cypress mulch and things like that. When a tree drops on their property, they mulch it up and they use it for firewood, or they use the chips for around their flower beds and whatnot. So, it's nothing to them to take it all away. And then they bring it to my father-in-law's farm where, there's mounds they're huge. I mean, there's a football field full of it. And when you look at it, when you pull up to it, you look at it and it looks like almost like a cypress mulch or wood chips. However, when you get into it, you get down to where it's been sitting there for 30 years. Now it's breaking down, and it's like forest floor. And man, you smell that. It's so good. As weird as that sounds, I'm really in tune with like after it rains, that beautiful smell you get when you dig into this dirt pile and you hold it up to your nose. And my father-in-law, first time I met him, he's like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" And he looks at me, he goes, "Hey, Mike, do you like that?" I'm like, "Oh, Jack, you don't even know." He goes, "It's all yours. Take whatever you want." So every year I see people, I've been taking it for years, but every spring there's more there. There's more there. And I'm going for the deep stuff. So it's beautiful stuff. But if you guys are cypress mulch users, there's and it's very hard to find in the Midwest. I don't know about where you guys are at, the East Coast and then the South, but there's a cypress mulch that they call it double milled. So they run it through the chipper, the grinder, whatever it is. They run it through twice, and it's a lot finer than like the long toothpick size, pokers is what I call them.
Yeah, I get the fine stuff.
Yeah, that fine stuff, but I can't find. It's hard to find here in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's hard to find that really nice fine stuff. I found some that's better than like Home Depot and stuff. It's the 100% special order from like an Ace a couple towns away, and it's like $7 a bag, but it's worth it because it's more fine than the stuff you go to like Lowe's or Home Depot. It's huge pieces there, and a lot of times in their cypress mulch you find like plastic or wire or stuff mixed in. This stuff, I haven't found anything mixed in it, and it's a lot finer. It's not quite as nice as I'd like it to be, but it's better than the stuff I found at Lowe's.
And I could tell you why that is too, CJ. It's So these people that have these processing machines, when it's coarse like those, the little plastic that's in there, the little wire that you find in there, it's not going to damage their machines. However, when they run it through that second chipper, now if the plastic and the wire and stuff hits those chipping blades, it could damage their machine. And again, we all know everything boils down to money. So they take care of their machinery where the big one can handle. I mean, I've seen fucking tire rubber in some normal, cypress mulch. And it's like, how the hell did tire rubber get in there? Well, they don't care. But when they run that first chip through the finer machine, now they're pulling all that stuff out of it because they don't want to damage their machinery. Yeah. It's crazy how people think.
Yeah.
But so we're at an hour and 22. Man, this was a great conversation, CJ. I really enjoyed this. Thank you, Kat. And we'll have you on again, of course, because I suspect that, and this is a little subliminal thing from Uncle Mike to CJ. When you start working on that secondary building, you might want to start thinking about Indicus complex, tree monitors. You know what I mean? You got that big facility with those giant cages. Yeah, switch it up a little bit.
One thing I don't like to do is feed anything that requires insects. So I have to keep the monitors that's one reason we haven't got tree monitors. I'm not scared of insects. I like insects, but feeding crickets, and I've raised dubia roaches and stuff. It just, something about it just annoys me. It's so much easier just to go thaw a quail.
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about this, CJ, when you're looking in your enclosure and now there's the little gnats from the cricket boxes and they're flying around and they're always right in front of your face and they go up your nose and you breathe them in. That sucks about insects, but it kind of goes with the territory. But
yeah, and crickets stink so bad. I don't care how often you clean them or what.
Roaches smell the worst. I don't like roaches. I don't feed those anymore.
And I started getting allergic to dubia roaches. So
I get a little itchy when I mess with my roach colonies, but my roach colonies don't stink. Crickets do, but my roach colonies, they don't smell like, I don't know, maybe I'm used to it, but they don't, like my wife don't complain about the roaches. Of course, they complain about the little gnat flies, but so again, it's we've been going about an hour and 23 minutes. Man, this was I had a great time with you, CJ. And
it was fun.
We'll do another one. I know you were nervous, and I'm like, dude, we got nothing to worry about. People want to hear what you got to say.
I don't go in front of camera too much, so
that's all right. Well, you better gear up. You better gear up for number 2. And again, Kathy Brown, thank you so much for always filling in for Jen. You're a great co-host as well. So take us out, Kathy.
I appreciate y'all having me on.
Hey, CJ, anywhere you want to put out there that people can find you at, like social medias or numbers or whatever it is?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook at Monitor Ops and Exotics. Instagram, Monitor Ops Exotics, and Morph Market, Monitor Ops and Exotics. So that's pretty much it.
You're an easy guy to find.
Yep. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yep.
Yeah,
Kathy,
it was nice.
Take us out, Kathy.
Everybody. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
And I got to, well, it's not next week. So let me say one more thing.
Another week. Okay.
When I was planning on doing a show from the Reptile Talks and, and thinking it through, I'm like, man, it's going to be like a whirlwind. I'm going to be meeting a bunch of people that I really look up to. And I intended to have Phil Goss on, and he's going to be at the Reptile Talks. So I kind of shifted gears a little bit. And so not this next coming week, but that next weekend, filling in for me is going to be my man, Nick Lillis. So stay tuned for what Nick's got coming up.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. See you guys later.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Y'all too.